Let me begin with this question. Are we running from Earth, or are we running from responsibility? That's the hook. Because before we talk about evolution, before we talk about space travel, rockets, and red planets, we must talk about purpose. When humanity looks at Mars, like the missions planned by NASA and companies like SpaceX, we see exploration, we see advancement, we see scientific ambition. But I want you to see something deeper. I want you to see destiny. Environment does not change identity, mindset does. Let me begin with a question that should disturb you. If I take a confused man from Earth and place him on Mars, does he become wise simply because he changed planets? If I move a divided society into a space colony, does division disappear in lower gravity? Location has never transformed character. Geography does not produce greatness. Mindset does. Humanity is fascinated with relocation. We believe a new city will fix our discipline. A new country will fix our habits. A new opportunity will fix our laziness. Now we are dreaming of a new planet. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Wherever you go, you take yourself with you. The atmosphere may be different, but your attitude travels in the same spacecraft. The missions envisioned by organizations like NASA and private pioneers such as SpaceX represent extraordinary technological progress. Rockets can be engineered, habitats can be constructed, oxygen can be generated. But here, this carefully technology can sustain your body. It cannot elevate your thinking. And if your thinking remains small, your environment will eventually shrink to match it. You cannot escape immaturity by changing scenery. You cannot outfly irresponsibility. You cannot colonize your way out of a broken mindset. The greatest frontier is not Mars. It is the human mind. If a person lacks discipline on Earth, zero gravity will not give him discipline. If leaders lack integrity here, red soil will not create integrity there. Evolution begins when the mind expands beyond survival into stewardship. It begins when we shift from asking, "What can I take?" to "What can I build?" It begins when responsibility becomes internal rather than enforced. Consider this hook: a lion in a zoo is still a lion. Change the cage and you do not change the nature. In the same way, change the planet and you do not automatically change the consciousness of its inhabitants. Real evolution is internal architecture. It is the reconstruction of belief systems, the refinement of values, the upgrading of vision. Mars will demand cooperation. It will demand innovation. It will demand psychological resilience. And those demands will expose the quality of our thinking, because environment does not create character, it reveals it. If humanity arrives on Mars with a consumer mentality, the planet becomes a resource to exploit. If humanity arrives with a steward mentality, the planet becomes a responsibility to manage. The difference is not planetary conditions. The difference is mindset. Here is another hook. You can build a futuristic colony with outdated thinking. And outdated thinking will sabotage futuristic structures every time. Evolution, in its highest form, is not about adapting to low oxygen levels. It is about elevating perspective. When the mind matures, innovation follows. When the mind matures, unity strengthens. When the mind matures, leadership becomes service rather than dominance. Do not misunderstand progress. Advancement in travel is not advancement in wisdom. We have already proven on Earth that intelligence without moral development creates imbalance. So the real question is not whether humans can survive on Mars. The real question is whether humans can think differently enough to thrive there. Mindset determines whether isolation produces conflict or collaboration. Mindset determines whether scarcity produces panic or creativity. Mindset determines whether power corrupts or empowers. You do not become greater because your environment becomes larger. You become greater because your thinking becomes deeper. And if humanity truly evolves mentally, embracing discipline, unity, accountability, and long-term vision, then any planet becomes an opportunity rather than an escape. The transformation of environment is impressive. The transformation of mind is revolutionary. Pressure forces potential to manifest. Let me challenge you with this thought: comfort has never produced greatness. Ease has never revealed destiny. And Mars will not be comfortable. Mars will not be forgiving. Mars will not negotiate with weakness. It will demand excellence from every human who dares to step onto its surface. Here is the hook. You do not discover who you are when everything works. You discover who you are when nothing works. On Earth, we have backups for our backups. We have abundance of air, water, food, infrastructure. But on Mars, every breath will be calculated. Every resource will be measured. Every mistake will carry weight. And when pressure increases, potential awakens. Diamonds are not formed in comfort. They are formed under extreme pressure. The same principle applies to humanity. Organizations like NASA understand that space is unforgiving. Companies like SpaceX design systems with precision, because one small error in space is catastrophic. Why? Because pressure removes the luxury of carelessness. And when carelessness disappears, discipline emerges. Pressure is not your enemy. It is your revealer. When humans are placed in a hostile environment like Mars, survival will require collaboration at a level we have never experienced. Ego will become dangerous. Division will become expensive. Laziness will become fatal. And in that intensity, hidden gifts will rise to the surface. Innovation will accelerate. Creativity will expand. Leadership will mature. Think about it. Some of the greatest inventions in human history were born during crisis. War, scarcity, exploration, these seasons forced humanity to think differently. Pressure compresses time. It speeds up learning. It exposes inefficiency. It eliminates excuses. Here is another hook. When the environment stops supporting you, you are forced to support yourself. Mars will not support human life naturally. Humans will have to engineer sustainability. That process alone will activate intellectual evolution. Scientists will have to innovate beyond current limitations. Engineers will have to solve problems in real time. Psychologists will have to understand human behavior under isolation. Every field will be stretched, and stretching produces growth. You never grow inside your comfort zone. You expand at the edge of your capacity. Pressure also refines character. In isolation, small conflicts become magnified. In confinement, attitudes become visible. In danger, courage either appears or collapses. Mars will not create courage. It will reveal whether it exists. It will not create unity. It will test whether we value it. The human body adapts to stress through resilience. Muscles grow when resistance challenges them. The mind sharpens when complexity confronts it. The spirit strengthens when responsibility increases. Pressure is the gymnasium of greatness. But here is the critical insight. Pressure without purpose creates panic. Pressure with purpose creates power. If humanity approaches Mars merely as an escape from Earth's problems, the pressure will break us. But if we approach it as a mission rooted in vision, the pressure will build us. Vision organizes stress. Purpose channels adversity into productivity. Scarcity on Mars will demand strategic thinking. Limited oxygen will demand efficient systems. Distance from Earth will demand autonomy. These demands will stretch human capability beyond its current expression. And when capability stretches, evolution accelerates. You have never known the full capacity of a system until it is tested at its limits. Mars represents a limit test for humanity. It will expose weaknesses in planning, in leadership, in psychology, and in cooperation. But exposure is not destruction. Exposure is opportunity. Because once weakness is revealed, it can be strengthened. Pressure is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are being expanded. And if humanity embraces the pressure of Mars with discipline, unity, and vision, then that red planet will not just be a destination in space. It will become a catalyst for unlocking potential that has been dormant within us all along. True evolution is moral and purpose-driven. Let me begin with a question that should shake every ambitious mind. What is the value of reaching another planet if we have not yet mastered ourselves? Because advancement without alignment is dangerous. Power without character is destructive. And expansion without purpose is chaos wearing a sophisticated suit. Here is the hook. Just because you can go somewhere does not mean you are ready to govern it. Humanity stands at the edge of extraordinary technological capability, with agencies like NASA and innovators like SpaceX pushing the boundaries of exploration. We are proving that intelligence can break barriers once thought impossible. But intelligence alone is not evolution. Skill alone is not maturity. Advancement alone is not wisdom. Biology may adapt over generations to different gravity. Science may enhance endurance. Artificial systems may regulate life support. But none of these guarantee justice, unity, humility, or responsibility. And without those, any civilization, whether on Earth or Mars, carries the seeds of its own instability. The real question is not whether humans can terraform a planet. The real question is whether humans can transform themselves. Here is another hook. If you expand your territory without expanding your integrity, your territory becomes a battlefield. Throughout history, human progress has often outpaced human character. We developed powerful tools before we developed the restraint to use them wisely. We learned to extract resources before we learned to steward them. We mastered systems before we mastered selfishness. If that pattern follows us beyond Earth, then Mars becomes another stage for repeating old mistakes in a new environment. True evolution begins when values mature alongside capability. Imagine a Martian colony built not merely on engineering excellence, but on ethical excellence. A society where leadership is defined by service, not dominance. Where collaboration outweighs competition, where long-term sustainability overrides short-term gain. That is evolution at its highest level. Not just adapting to survive, but choosing to thrive responsibly. Purpose organizes power. Without purpose, power corrupts direction. When humanity understands why it exists, not merely to consume, not merely to conquer, but to cultivate, then expansion becomes constructive rather than exploitative. Mars will magnify the consequences of moral failure. In a fragile ecosystem, dishonesty can destroy trust. In a confined habitat, selfishness can fracture unity. In a resource-limited setting, greed can threaten survival. The margin for error will shrink. And when margins shrink, character matters more than ever. Here is the powerful insight: the higher you rise, the stronger your foundation must be. If humanity rises to interplanetary status without strengthening its ethical foundation, instability will follow. But if we evolve internally, developing discipline, accountability, empathy, and vision, then our expansion into space becomes an expression of maturity rather than ambition alone. Purpose also protects perspective. When individuals understand that their work contributes to something greater than themselves, ego decreases and excellence increases. A purpose-driven colony would not just aim to survive, it would aim to represent the best of human potential. Scientists would innovate not for fame, but for future generations. Leaders would decide not for power, but for preservation. Citizens would contribute not out of fear, but out of shared mission. You see, evolution is not measured only by physical adaptation. It is measured by the refinement of motives. It is measured by the elevation of thinking. It is measured by the alignment between ability and responsibility. If humanity steps onto Mars with clarity of purpose and maturity of character, that moment will represent more than a scientific milestone. It will represent growth in consciousness. Because when morality guides innovation and purpose directs expansion, civilization does not merely spread, it strengthens. And that is the evolution that truly determines whether we are ready for the future we are so determined to reach.